I'm John Batchelor. Larry Kudlow, my colleague and co-host of CNBC and Kudlow Radio on the weekend, and Steve Moore of the Heritage Foundation is here. And we've been commenting about this fresh news on immigration and the contest between the Republican Congress, House and Senate, and the Democrat President of the United States. However, a previous contest is now due for review. And Steve Moore, in the Washington Times in these last days, has published a surprise about the Affordable Care Act. There are the complaints now routinely that the deductibles are so high that people who even have help from the federal government or the state governments to afford insurance are avoiding their physicians. The opposite effect of what we were told. But cost. Steve, the federal spending is rising, what you report, 8.2%. That sounds high. I'm just going to say that's a big number. What is driving it, Steve?
Well, yeah, overall federal spending this year is up in the first 4 months, 8%. But get a hold of this, John, and this is a jaw dropper. Healthcare costs, Obamacare, the increase in Medicaid and the increase in what we call the Obamacare subsidies, those programs are up 30% in cost in 4 months, which is just an astonishing hole in the budget. So when the president, you remember his famous promise that this would not add a dime to the deficit. It's not adding a dime to the deficit. It's adding tens of billions of dollars into the deficit. At the same time, by the way, John, as you just said, not only is it blowing a hole in the federal budget, it's blowing a hole in family budgets because people can't afford. Not so much. I would just disagree with one thing. You said it's the deductibles. The bigger problem for families is the premiums. They can't afford to buy the insurance. Larry, in many cases, even with the taxpayer subsidies.
Larry,
where's the big money coming? Is it Medicaid, Steve? It's subsidies. Where are the expenses coming from?
This is a great point, and I'm so glad you asked that because, you know, President Obama has been boasting for the last year and a half or so. Look at all these new people we've signed up for Obamacare. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what they've really signed up for is Medicaid, and Medicaid is just a low-income welfare program. And for the president to boast that he's put 5 or 6 million more people on Medicaid would be like boasting we've got, 5 or 6 million more people on food stamps. And in fact, Larry, one of the reasons the Medicaid rolls are up so much, not just the expansion of the program under Obamacare, but a lot of employers have been dropping health plans, and guess what? Those people are ending up on Medicaid. So in my opinion, the big expansion of Medicaid is not a positive development, it's a very negative development for the. But by the way, one last thing, Medicaid is about the worst health care system in the country.
Right. Because there are long lines at Medicaid that aren't true at Medicare. Larry, a fact that you and I exchanged, that there are 30 members of the Senate who voted for the original Affordable Care Act in 2010 who are no longer in the Senate, and that the Affordable Care Act is now the biggest success the Republican Party has ever enjoyed for gaining seats in the House and in the Senate. So should we just leave it alone, Larry, or should we talk about it?
Well, they have to talk about it. I mean, look, Nancy Pelosi got it right. She said back in 2010, this bill may cost us the Congress. She was right. Both midterms in 2010 and 2014 were fundamentally based on the public's dislike of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. So, there you have it. But, to Steve's point, you're creating these irrevocable charges and expenses, which are breaking the budget, and which you're eventually going to have to pay for one way or the other. Again, the Republican Party needs to have some unanimity regarding its Obamacare policy. Whether they're going to roll it back, rewrite it, or take votes or whatever, they've just got to come forward with a positive plan because, that's good politics. Otherwise, I think, as much as Steve is right, I just don't think the budget overruns change anything, at least in the short run.
Steve, the detail here about how much it's costing, have you seen that promoted or mentioned or used by the Republicans as they talk about the Affordable Care Act in these early months of the Congress?
Well, they really haven't. I kind of found it buried in this, monthly report that the Congressional Budget Office puts out, and the numbers just leaped off the page to me, and that's why I wrote about it. But they should be talking about this. I mean, it's unbelievable how much these costs are rising, and even Medicare costs are rising. And remember, the other promise the president made about Obamacare was that it was going to bend down the cost of health care for people. Remember this one, John? He said the average family is going to save $2,500 a year on their health health insurance premiums. Show me one family that's saving $2,500 a year. Just one.
I have to believe, Steve, that the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress right now want to make changes. They don't want to go to the electorate in 2 years with these numbers so favoring the Republicans who've rejected the Affordable Care Act so far. I have to believe the Democrats want to participate in this, and it's not just cross their arms and not talk about it. Is there a way to start that conversation, Steve?
Yeah, to Larry's point, which is so right, Republicans need an alternative to Obamacare. And Larry, what I have been suggesting to them is provide people with an alternative to Obamacare. I mean, most people don't want to be in Obamacare. They don't want to be on Medicaid. And, you know, with health savings accounts and other kind of patient-driven health reforms, the Republicans could say, look, we're going to cover more people with health care at a lower cost, at a quality of care that's higher than Obamacare has. So it's a win-win-win for the American people.
Larry, does Mr. Ryan have such a plan? Is there something in the House right now that could offer an alternative, point out the costs and the poor performance of this Affordable Care Act, and provide something that would have bipartisan support?
There's a generic Republican proposal. Senator Burr, Senator Hatch, and House member Freddie Upton from Michigan, who's the chairman of the Commerce Committee, which legislates this along with Ways and Means. So this Burr-Hatch-Upton bill seems to be picking up support. The first step is the Republicans have to agree to it, and I don't think they have quite yet. The second step would be to try to sell it to some so-called moderate Democrats, even though there aren't hardly any moderate Democrats left. So we'll see. This is a political issue. Ovik may wish to weigh in on this.
Yes, he will. Yes, we will ask him specifically about that.
I just want to remind you, as though you need reminding, Medicaid is one of two health plans that is completely government-run.
Right.
And it is a catastrophe. The other one is the VA, another catastrophe. So if anybody doubts that state-run, government-run health care won't work, just take a look at Medicaid and the VA.
Gentlemen, we just have a minute, and we've given such gloomy news so far. I want to say, before both of you, the economy looks great. Larry, to an amateur like myself, this looks like good times. Am I correct in reading it that way?
Yeah, I wouldn't jump over the ship on it, John, but there's no question the jobs numbers have really improved. And I'll tell you what else. The strong dollar and lower oil prices is really helping consumer incomes. Real incomes are going up. So that's a big plus. The big minus, businesses don't seem to be investing, and corporate tax reform is stalled.
And Steve, can we celebrate a little bit? Larry asks me to moderate, so I do. But it's certainly better. We have 15 seconds, Steve.
Yeah, things are better. And, you know, the number one word to explain why the economy is better, fracking. Because that's what lowered oil and gas prices. It's a big windfall, $100 billion to the American consumer.
Steve Moore of the Heritage Foundation, Larry Kudlow, CNBC and Cumulus Media, Larry Kudlow show on the weekend. More Affordable Care Act when we come back with Ovik Roy of the Manhattan Institute. I'm John Batchelor.